Preamble to Ancient Geometry. Synthesis of Principles. Part 2 of Making a Line. A line is generated by a moving point. We saw that if we moved a point in our imagination between a beginning point and an end point, a line would be thus generated. The motion of the point generates a magnitude that has length and shape, but which has no breadth. This we knew from our analysis was how we understood a line. We saw previously that interspersing points and stacking points each fails to generate a line. We also saw that there were several objections against the third method of generating a line through a moving point, based on the truth that points have position but lack parts. The first objection was based on the fact that by their essence points have position. It seemed, therefore, that you could not change your position. The second objection was based on the fact that points has no parts. It seemed impossible that something without parts could generate something like the line that had both parts and shape. Objection 1. A dot may move, but not a point, for position is essential to a point, because it is part of a point's definition. But something cannot change its essence, so points cannot change their position. What is the fact of the matter? Can points move? Obviously, bodies move, and if a body moves, so does its surface, and so do the lines that divide the parts of its surface, and so do the points that divide the lines on its surface. Therefore, since bodies move, so do points. How then are we to answer the objection? What is the mistake made in the objection? Having position is essential to a point, but having one particular position here is not in a point's definition. Now, it may seem that this is an ad hoc change to the definition of a point, and so it is necessary that we show that the analysis requires that, although the point have position, not that it have a particular set position. But this is easy enough to see, for there are many points in that lines can be divided in many places. If a particular position were in the definition of point, then all points would have to have the same position. So when a point's position changes here to there is no essential change. A moving point is still a point. The position of the point is more like the point's matter. It is part of an animal's definition that it have a body, and yet it is not necessary that the body be constructed of this flesh and this bone. That is not part of the essence. And so, in fact, it is possible for an animal's body to change in its lifetime, for the particular matter that composes it to change, as it sheds hair and skin and blood and bone and muscle tissue are replaced by new cells. This is something like a moving point changing its position. Objection 2. One cannot give what one doesn't have. A point can never have magnitude or shape, so it can never have the power to make anything with magnitude and shape. How are we to respond to this objection? Between any two points, there are an infinity of paths that the point can take as it moves from start to finish. Can a moving point produce a line? It is important to recognize that this infinity of paths is not an actual infinity, but a potential infinity, an infinity of unrealized paths between the 2 points. The point brings into actuality one of the possible paths by moving along it. The path formed by the point is not formed out of the point. Rather, it is formed out of the possibilities. This is something like a cross-country skier, who, as he skis, forms a path behind him in the snow. This path is not formed out of the skier's body parts. Rather, it is something left in the snow. The snow has an infinity of possible paths that could be left behind the skier, but the path that is left is determined by the skier's motion. The realized path defines the generated line, and so we can view the actual line as a joint result of the material possibilities and the particular motion that brings only one possibility into reality. So what is the mistake in the objection? It is true that something cannot give what it does not have, and there is nothing in a point's essence that can make a line. But it is not the bare point that makes a line. It is the moving point that makes the line. The motion does have a succession of what the line needs, namely continuity, length, and shape. The motion has continuity, length, and shape not all at once, but as I said, in succession, while the line has these all at once. What exists in the motion in succession exists in the path in persistence. When an instrument produces an effect, the effect is not formed by the instrument's own power, but by the power of its mover. The mover transmits its form through the instrument's motion, either a form of the same kind, as when hot things produce other hot things, or a similar form adapted to the matter, as when heat radiation in one thing produces heat vibration in another. So the point here acts like an instrument. The motion transmits to the path the actuality. Bam! This fully explains the line. The endpoints give the position to the line. They determine the end of the line. The motion gives the length and shape to the line. And the point, because it has nothing but position to it, can give nothing to the line, no breadth, except it is an adequate instrument to produce the line because it has nothing but position. And the parts of the line do have position. This line has a complex shape because the motion that was used to produce it is complex. The simpler the movement of the generating point, the simpler the shape of the line produced. Now the line that we have generated here certainly appears simpler than the previous line, and yet it is difficult for the mind to perfectly master it. There are certain likenesses in the crests and the troughs across the line, and yet there are differences that would be hard for the mind to totally wrap around. If we are to have a scientific understanding of shape, it is essential that we figure out how it is we can discover what shape is. Now, generally, shape is the disposition of the parts of a magnitude. And since lines are the simplest magnitude, we must first determine what a scientific understanding of the shapes of lines. In fact, we must discover what is the simplest shape of a line, for that will be the principle through which we will understand all other lines if we are to have a scientific, geometric, mathematical understanding of them, abstracted from physical matter and motion. The simpler the movement of the generating point, the simpler the shape of the line. And yet, why is one movement simpler than the other? The purple line certainly appears simpler, but what is it that makes it simpler? In the next video, we will answer these questions. What is the simplest shape? But to answer that, we must ask, what is it that makes one shape simpler than another? And how can we understand this without using words that are vague and imprecise?